My wife asked me to make another tall, warm garden bed. In previous videos about our innovative garden beds, there were some critical comments that beds made from reinforced extruded polystyrene foam are expensive and very difficult to make. On the contrary, I consider them cheap and simple. So to compare the cost and labor intensity, I decided to make a new garden bed in a more classic way. And maybe the nickname that stuck with me, Yasha Penaplex, will leave me for a while. But only for a short while, because I can't help myself and I'm always experimenting, using Penaplex both in construction and in gardening. Since I try to do everything with care and careful planning, I'll say in advance that I actually managed to make a garden bed with wooden sides that will most likely last more than 50 years. Not just 5 to 8 like regular wooden beds. Because I used an innovative principle of ventilated sides, which increases the lifespan of the wood many times over. Let me remind you that the lifespan of beds made from reinforced extruded polystyrene foam is also more than 50 years. A raised bed with wooden sides may seem simple at first glance, but during the manufacturing process, some nuances became apparent. I'll share them with you, and you'll be able to do it even faster and better than I did. I'll also talk about the mistakes you shouldn't make. And after watching this video, you'll be able to choose between wood or extruded polystyrene for yourself. Viewers of the Yasha Koshiak Songs channel will be the first to learn this important information. So let's go through everything step by step. Hello everyone. As usual, I'll start with the layout. I'm not starting from scratch, but from the very first bed made of Penaplex, since it's been decided to place the new bed in line with it. To do this, I drive in 2 stakes and stretch a cord, which is an extension of one of the sides of the bed made of extruded polystyrene foam. I'll use boards for the sides. For supports, I'll use stakes made of iron angle. I leave some space so there's a passage between the old and new beds, and I drive in the first stake. I try to drive it in strictly vertically, and basically, I managed to do it. I place the board relative to the first post with a slight overhang. I make this overhang at least as thick as the boards I'm using. Using the string and the length of the board as a guide, I drive in the second stake. This stake will be where the boards are joined lengthwise, so I try to drive it in as accurately as possible. A centimeter to the right or a centimeter to the left is already a big error. A simple measuring tool really helps to keep the vertical alignment precise. At this point, I quickly realized that it would have been easier to drill the holes before the stakes were driven in. Taking them out is no longer an option, so I'm drilling right where they are. The start is made and the first board is fixed in place with 2 screws. I finished drilling the hole to allow the boards to be joined lengthwise. I'm using exactly 4-meter boards, but according to my wife's instructions, the new garden bed needs to be at least 5 meters long. That's why I cut 2 pieces from the next 4-meter board, each equal to the width of the future garden bed, and that's just under a meter. I cut the remaining part in half and get 2 pieces, each a little over a meter long. I decided not to rush with driving in the next stakes, so I'm doing some preliminary marking and drilling holes. I plan for small gaps between the boards. I made a stake template. With its help, the work went much faster. Corner stake, here you go. A stake for joining boards lengthwise, not a problem either, though I did mess up with some extra holes. I'll fix that as I go. I'm driving in the third support. Its distance from the first one isn't random, it's set so that both the short and long boards can join together on the support. To avoid getting too caught up in driving the stakes to the exact height, I decided to leave them a bit short of the required height. I figured this would save me some trouble later on. I won't have to cut off any excess tops or, on the other hand, regret that I drove them in too deep and didn't have enough height. The uneven terrain of the site can also make its own adjustments. That's why I started not from the bottom but from the top board. Then I installed the middle join boards and only after that the bottom one. Now it became clear how much the whole side could be lowered. But first, I had to unscrew all the boards from the middle peg and temporarily remove the middle row, since it had come apart anyway. With the boards attached to all 3 pegs at once, such a correction might not have worked. After making the correction, I drive the peg to the required height and screw it in for good. Now it became clear exactly where the last peg of the first side of the tall garden bed needs to be driven in. I decide not to struggle anymore with driving in the end posts too precisely and leave a small overhang on the boards. It's quicker to just saw them off in place later. Staggering the joints of the boards, instead of having them all meet at one corner, will make the sides of the garden bed more reliable. And the appearance shouldn't suffer either. That's how I encouraged myself when I had to carefully measure the distance between the stakes. Then I measure the distance between the 2 posts where the boards join and divide it by 3. I mark out and drive in 2 more supports. So, just as I planned, I used 6 stakes for a board a little over 5 meters long. I was better prepared for the next board. Through experience, I already found out that I need stakes with 4 hole options. Corner ones, regular intermediate ones where the boards of the central row are joined, and intermediate ones where the boards of the upper and lower rows are joined. I'll tell you a little about the material I decided to use. I chose Larch planking of AB grade. That means it has knots, but they shouldn't fall out. I couldn't find larch boards longer than 4 meters for sale. I bought 9 pieces. For the posts, I bought 12 linear meters of hot rolled equal angle steel, 40 by 40 millimeters, 4 millimeters thick. At the store, they cut it into 2-meter pieces so it would fit well in my car. The boards didn't fit, so I had to pay extra for delivery. The cutting of the angle steel was free. That's why I didn't push my luck, and once I got home, I turned the 2-meter pieces into 1-meter pieces. By the way, when I discovered bimetal blades for a hand hacksaw, I started believing in this almost forgotten tool again. They cut much faster than regular ones. This is a tip for those who haven't mastered the angle grinder yet, or are a bit afraid of it. My dad often recalls a story about how his colleague at the Special Design Bureau, also a design engineer, either in the late Soviet era or already in the 90s, found a toppled high-voltage power line tower. You know, the tower type ones. And in a couple of days, he sawed it up with a handsaw and took it home. The angle iron he got this way helped him make good progress in his construction. He removed the burrs with a file. At that time, it was hard to buy angle iron, and only a few people had grinders. And it seems that bimetal blades hadn't been invented yet. But the main thing is the desire to build. Now we have an abundance of everything. I'm painting the angle iron with a 3-in-1 rust-proof paint. To treat the boards for the garden bed, I bought a reliable antiseptic and a few other things, but not for the garden bed. After all, there's a lot to take care of. One coat isn't enough, so I painted the posts again. My wife wanted an even more olive color, so she's painting the boards again. If it needs to be done, it needs to be done. I don't have a large square, so I'm using a leftover large format tile to set a right angle. You need to drive the stakes in right the first time. You can't just move them a centimeter to the right or left. They won't stand securely anymore. With the first edge in place, it became very easy to judge how deep to drive the posts. It was very convenient to have a small stock of 6-meter naturally dried boards behind the shed. I took as many as I needed, planed them, and got to work. It's both convenient and cost-effective. But the supplies ran out, so I had to buy ready-made boards. I think many of us have to buy ready-made materials. It's not always possible to keep a constant supply. And not everyone has the equipment to process it. Planking differs from regular plain boards in that it doesn't have sharp edges. It doesn't have grooves or tongues. It can be straight or beveled. I got the beveled one. Probably because I'm Yasha Koshak. I didn't stretch a string when making the second side, since there's already something to go by. So far, everything is turning out pretty well, and I'm pleased with myself. I decided not to use square welded profile pipes for the supports because I consider them to be significantly less corrosion resistant than angle bars. Such pipes have a weld seam along their entire length, which is not very noticeable, but it's there. Welded parts rust much faster, and it's almost impossible to protect profile pipe posts from the inside. They're suitable for trusses, but for driving into the ground, I think angle bars are better. Bars are At first, I was thinking of using decking boards that are 27 millimeters thick, but 20 millimeter planking turned out to be noticeably cheaper. Its width is 12 centimeters. Planking made from larch is stronger than planking made from pine. It's usually used for cladding building facades. It's a kind of more expensive siding option. The most attractive result is achieved if the installation is done in a concealed way, meaning the fasteners aren't visible. The building starts to look as if it's made from solid natural timber. Special metal brackets are used for concealed installation. In my case, concealed installation is even easier. You only need screws. I use size 20, 3.5 millimeters thick. The larger the diameter, the stronger the hold should be. I found all the information about the planking on the internet only after I had already bought it. When I bought it, to me it was just boards, nothing special. Why larch and not pine? Larch lumber costs twice as much as similar pine lumber, but when buried in the ground, larch lasts twice as long. With the direct contact with the soil, even on just one side, I think it's about the same. Before I looked into it, I thought larch lasted not just twice, but much longer. But it turns out that's only if it's in water. At first glance, it seems like there's no real savings. It's twice as expensive and only lasts twice as long. But there's definitely savings on labor. A raised bed made of pine will have to be built twice, meaning you'll have to build it and then rebuild it. But with larch, you only have to do it once. And our labor is money too. That's how I comforted myself, remembering how much I paid for 9 planking boards. It's already clear that these beds cost more than beds made from Penaplex, but sometimes you need to change the direction of your creativity. Now I was racking my brain, trying to figure out how to make these beds last as long as the ones made from extruded polystyrene foam. That is, up to 50 years. Of course, I'm hoping for the antiseptic, but constant contact with the soil is also a tough test for it. Protecting the boards from the inside with something like roofing felt is not the best option. There will be constant, never-drying dampness at the point of contact. The beginning of summer in our area turned out to be very rainy. During thunderstorms, there were just gale force winds. The thunderstorm wasn't for nothing. I came up with something. I'll use a used corrugated sheet from the gate, which was converted into a gate made of extruded polystyrene foam, and some simple fasteners. I'm cutting the sheet into strips a little shorter than the height of the sides. Here's how it's going to look. The metal has almost no contact with the boards. There's a significant gap, which should provide excellent ventilation. To create even gaps, I screw nuts to the boards with self-tapping screws. You can do without the nuts. They just help quickly ensure the same amount of unscrewed part on all the screws, which the corrugated sheet will rest on. The nuts are dirt cheap, so it's fine. I fasten the sheet in places just below and just above the improvised supports. Everything is quite sturdy. I'm sure there are other simple ways to make such gaps. This is the idea that came to my mind. I also left a small gap from the bottom boards to the ground, as if I felt that something would come up. Therefore, the boards, from being considered as buried due to operating conditions, now have the same operating conditions as, for example, fence boards. And a fence made of Siberian larch, treated with a strong antiseptic and painted with imported paint, should easily last 50 years. I made a template sheet, and the work of drilling holes went very quickly. After some practice, I demonstrate the optimal installation algorithm. I place the sheet, trimmed to width, between the side posts. I mark spots through the holes. I remove the sheet. I screw the supports on a bit above the marks at the top. At the bottom, I screw them on a bit below the marks. While editing this video, I realized that maybe I should have done the same thing with the middle row of boards. That way, they won't bear any load. If you repeat this, it's better to attach them to the middle row. In the very first bordered beds, which I've already taken apart, I used bent pieces made from leftover profiled sheet as fasteners to the posts. I saw for myself, thanks to the fact that it's galvanized, the profiled sheet behaves perfectly in contact with the soil. Plus, it will do an excellent job of preventing moisture from evaporating through the sides, just like extruded polystyrene foam. A garden bed is a simple thing. It's easy to mark it out with a string, a tile, and a regular bubble level. In the garden, the accuracy is garden level. But when it comes to construction, repairs, and design, it's much more convenient to use a laser level. With its help, for example, you can very easily check the evenness of the floor by inspecting the quality of the builder's work or your own quality. It's enough to turn on the horizontal beam and measure its distance to the floor in different spots. If there's no difference, then everything is great. You can also check the work of the bricklayers to see if everything is fine with their level. By turning on the vertical beam, you can check how things are with their vertical alignment. I decided to cover the gap between the boards and the metal with something. I went to a construction hypermarket, walked around a bit, and bought 50 by 50 millimeter angles, all made from the same profiled sheet. Each of these angles is 1 meter 25 centimeters long, and I needed 10 of them. As usual, I used the first angle as a template and drilled the required number of holes. The screw heads, placed at equal distances from each other, look better than if they were just put in by eye. Gradually, I realized that I don't have a clear goal to prove to everyone the superiority of beds made from reinforced, extruded polystyrene foam over other types of beds. I honestly felt relieved that the money wasn't spent in vain. After all, I'm using extruded polystyrene foam, as they say, not because life is so great for most of us, but for the sake of saving money. Even if the service life is the same, the cost price still isn't. I'm sure there are people for whom it's not too expensive to use natural wood, people who don't try to save on everything the way I do. This is a great garden bed option for people who aren't as stingy. There are probably quite a few of those among the subscribers of the Pesniyashi Koshiaka channel as well. Before, they used to watch and just laugh, saying that necessity is the mother of invention, but now they might even pick up something useful for themselves. It turned out that the brackets give the garden bed a really finished look. Now, the gaps between the metal and the board are no longer visible. Since I made the metal sheet borders a bit lower than the wooden ones, the brackets definitely don't make the ventilation any worse. The reliable and durable sides of the raised garden bed are ready. To turn the bed into a raised and warm garden bed, there are still a few more steps to take. Near the house, next to the $1,000 home, a real treasure, if I may say so, is waiting for its time. Gardeners who couldn't resist the genetic call of their pagan ancestors burned the branches left over from pruning trees and bushes. In addition, they burned useful leaves and grass. Last fall, we didn't worsen the environmental situation in the village with bonfires and acrid smoke. It's very hard to get rid of the obsessive urge to burn something. Many residents of our village burn things. My wife and I have been working on ourselves for a long time. That's why we shred branches with a garden shredder. I believe that we need to and can fight the remnants of the pagan past. The cult of fire and smoke is fine, but everything is good in moderation. But now we have a great advantage in the form of very useful coarse organic matter. I put the coarse organic matter at the very bottom of the garden bed. Since the sides turned out to be quite high, I decided not to remove the sod. The mulch has been lying there since last fall, and the composting process has already started in it. If you don't have the free and very useful component made from shredded branches, yet you can replace it with waste wood like old boards. I cover the layer of coarse organic matter with a layer of pure humus, which I previously collected from the bottom of the composter. Anaerobic bacteria living in the humus will penetrate the wood material, multiply in it, and warm the bed with the heat of their activity. I water everything thoroughly. We, Belarusians, are descendants of pagan ancestors. Despite having adopted Christianity long ago, we still maintain an invisible, unbreakable connection with the forces of nature. That's what I thought when my heavy watering seemed to have caused a strong thunderstorm. Nature was clearly upset with us for some reason, because large hailstones also poured down from the sky. These are the realities of a risky farming zone. You can't go against that. We can only dream of prosperity. Raised warm beds definitely increase the chances of getting a good harvest, even in our Belarusian climate. The climate of Belarus may seem favorable for agriculture at first glance. In reality, we are in a true zone of risky farming. This year, there were late frost, and we definitely won't be able to enjoy plenty of our own cherries. We're not Kherson or Krasnodar, though. I tamped down the well-watered soil without being lazy. Then I used the contents of the composter. In it, we compost mowed grass, fallen leaves, and small branches. We call this kind of biomass medium organics. The composting process has already started in it, but only recently. If I hadn't rushed and installed the last small board, I could have rolled the wheelbarrow into the bed. But I rushed, so now I'm working by hand. Raised beds are very helpful during a rainy summer. The crops in them can't get waterlogged. We mulch the beds with mowed grass, so if there's a drought, we hardly need to water them. I'm watering everything thoroughly again, then I'm covering everything with a layer of previously collected clean humus. Finally, I've dug down to the fine organic matter. Here it is. It's almost humus. There are a lot of earthworms in it. Now they'll tirelessly work in the new garden bed. In our raised beds, the soil always stays loose and there's no need to dig them over. As you can see, creating a raised bed means that after the coarse organic matter, the contents of the composter are added in reverse order. By the way, the innovative compost bin made of reinforced extruded polystyrene foam is exactly 2 years old. Here's who I met in it. The mouse didn't gnaw a hole in it because this material is too tough for mice. She gets in from the top. I removed some of the contents and now the mouse can't jump out. We Belarusians are kind people. We stand for peace. Run our little mammal brother. For the experiment, I didn't make any ventilation holes in the box. Penaplex doesn't let any moisture through, so the contents can't dry out like they do in a wooden compost box because of the gaps. It dries out and stops decomposing. That's not the case here. I found a lot of earthworms. I also came across huge rhinoceros beetle larvae. Don't confuse them with May beetle larvae. These are much bigger. They're beneficial because they don't feed on living plants. The compost bin has proven itself completely. It will last more than 50 years and it decorates the yard quite nicely. For extra reliability, I decided to play it safe and connect the sides together with galvanized threaded rods, so they definitely won't bulge. I'm drilling holes where the posts are located. I'm drilling right through the brackets. The bed is 98 centimeters wide, and the 1 meter 10 millimeter rods don't even need to be shortened with an angle grinder. The bed doesn't need to be dug over, so the rods won't get in the way. I think that if you don't care about the appearance, it's more reliable to use regular through furniture bolts than screws screwed in from the inside, for example. They have large rounded heads and fasten the boards to the metal very securely. If appearance isn't your top priority, it's better to use bolts. Time will tell. I already cover small organic matter with humus mixed with regular soil. I cover the very last layer with just soil. I let my wife plant the seedlings. We already have raised beds for the main crops. This bed is for garden strawberries. What about the cost? The corner brackets for sturdy supports cost 96 Belarusian rubles. That's $32, or 2,560 Russian rubles at the time this video was released. The planking board cost 203 of our rubles, or 68 bucks, or 5,400 Russian rubles. Decorative corner trims for edging cost 60 Belarusian rubles, 20 United States dollars, or 1,600 Russian rubles. Antiseptic plus paint cost 10 bucks, or 800 rubles. This is the cheapest expense item. All the hardware costs 15 bucks, or 1,200 rubles. I used 2.5 2-meter corrugated sheets. I had some old ones, so I didn't have to buy them. If you don't have them, that's another $40 or 3,200 rubles. So using only brand new materials, the garden bed costs $185, or almost 15,000 rubles. To prove the advantages of garden beds made from extruded polystyrene foam, I had to plunge into these crazy expenses. So how many strawberries does my wife need to grow now to make up for it? I'm posting all the videos about our extruded polystyrene foam garden beds under this video. Go check it out and see for yourself how much cheaper everything turns out if you use reinforced Penaplex. But seriously, of course, these kinds of garden beds also have a right to exist. You just need to be a bit richer than we are to afford them. If you divide $185 by 50 years, then such a garden bed costs $3.7 a year, which is only 300 rubles. Give a big thumbs up, subscribe to the Yasha Kosyak Songs channel, join the VKontakte group and Zen. All the links are below the video. Also hit the bell icon. And then I'll keep you updated for sure. Yes, let there be peace all over the world. Thank you.